There are a lot of difficult jobs in the WNBA and professional basketball at large, but I think the hardest is becoming an efficient and consistent guard. And now, midway through her fifth year in the WNBA, Sabrina Ionescu is really starting to find her groove as a legitimate star level player. She's been a star talent, an all star talent, but now she's becoming like that consistent, legitimate three-level scorer. She's always had the flashes of three-level scoring, and obviously, what she's brought from three-point land has been phenomenal. But I think this is the first year where she's really starting to establish herself as that full-on three-level scorer, and it's been huge for the Liberty. Currently, first in offensive rating. They're 11-2 headed into their rematch with the Aces, which is happening later today. Sorry, that's how the video worked out. Um, what's been most crucial in that is her growth in patience. She's really figured out how to be patient with screens. I think there was a lot of times last year and just throughout her career where she had kind of smothered her own drives, not let ball screens be fully set up. Letting plays and screens fully develop is so crucial to actually getting the most out of them. So what I mean by that, if you do not let a screen be fully set, or it's not even about it being set, it's about letting the screen happen the way that is best and most optimal for a play. If you don't let that happen, then yes, you're going to still put a gap in the defense, but it's not as much as it could be. So think of it like in terms of, you know, efficiency with a screen. Like there's efficiency with screens the same way that there is with taking a shot. Obviously, it's a lot harder to track what that looks like because it's a lot more in the eye of the beholder. But again, a very crucial growth and development. For reference, Sabrina Ionescu is taking 36.7% of all of her shots within 0 to 10 feet. That is if that holds up for the entirety of the season, that will be the first time in her career that she finishes above 30%. And that is big because she has not been she's been able to get into the paint, but she isn't always a player who has put consistent pressure on the rim. And that's really important for being able to grow into playing as more of a lead guard. So let's dig into some more of the numbers, and then we'll go through some of the plays. One of the most key areas of Sabrina having that growth as a player, first off, you can see that growth in 2-point percentage laid out here. But I think the most important part, and a big part of why I wanted to do this video, is looking at that second number next to 2-point percentages. So that is the percentage of two-pointers assisted on. So that's showing in this season where Sabrina is shooting 51% on two-pointers, 57.1% of all of her two-pointers have been assisted. Why does that matter? It's helped her immensely to be efficient by playing a little bit off the ball more. And it's been interesting because it sounds converse, but like in order to play on the ball more efficiently, they've been a lot more tactful in how Sabrina plays off the ball as a team, but also I think a lot of the growth that she's made has allowed some of the things that they've been doing in prior years to really pop more, particularly this one play that we're going to dive into shortly. Perhaps Sabrina's biggest development this season, outside of the actual, what she's doing and how she's seeing the court, she's really gotten comfortable with her floater and runners, and that's been crucial, again, in becoming somebody who can use all areas of the court. I think there was a tendency last year and years prior where what Sabrina can bring as a shooter and you have to worry about it. But given that she's not an awesome vertical athlete, not somebody like Kalia Copper who's going to be able to slash to the rim and really beat you there, I think the biggest thing for Sabrina is being able to use all areas of the court. So when she gets run off the line, teams have to worry about her more. With her finding this ability in between and comfortability there, and she's hitting the shot at a rate where you really do have to worry about it, I think that's been really crucial in her becoming an even more consistent finisher at the rim, along with that growth and patience like we talked about. And again, I think this is a growth and patience in and of itself. I think there was a tendency last year where Sabrina got ran off the line. She could just come really fast downhill, and it didn't always end up going super well because I think teams were comfortable just saying, all right, well, we're not going to send a ton of help. We're going to ride out your drive to the rim, and we know that you're probably not going to be elite enough of a finisher there where we have to overhelp and send a lot of extra pressure to you. Now, that's changing. So here's the play that I want to talk about and break down. It's called a UCLA Cut. I'll have a link down below to his site over on Medium, but shout out to Bowser who puts together the Basketball Action Dictionary where this is from, continuing the work of Dylan Murphy, who's currently coaching the NBA. They are two of the most informative people for me in terms of continuing to learn X's and O's, and I strongly encourage following them. This is the idea of a UCLA cut. So you have a player in the corner, guard comes up, pitches the ball to that player in the corner and then comes off a screen. That can be either, off that side towards the baseline or down the middle towards the baseline as well. This is something the Liberty have been absolutely eating with, particularly with Sabrina Ionescu. The whole point of what makes this difficult to guard is that it's like running a pick and roll without actually having to run a pick and roll. And just to add some extra to that, like it kind of changes up what you can do coverage wise, right? So like if you're thinking of a pick and roll coming, all right, you have your coverage set up for what you're going to do against a certain player, a certain tandem of players in that area of the court. Okay, well, when you use something that runs what is essentially a screening action without actually having the player that it's designed for handling the ball, it just makes it's a different variation. It adds something that the defense has to think about, has to focus on, and that is just different from what they're typically seeing out of a pick and roll. Like it's a very basic concept, but again, when you have such elite players like the top 3 or 4 teams in the league do, adding in that kind of variation can be really big. And again, this is something the Liberty ran a lot last year, particularly for Sabrina and Courtney Vandersloot, but it is hit differently this year the way that Sabrina has really found her game with respect to patience. This played out heavily in New York's victory over the then undefeated Connecticut Sun. I talked a little bit about that with Stephanie White after, and we're going to break down some of those plays as well. But I want to get her thoughts in here really quick because I thought she brought some really great analysis to the table. I mean, she's Stephanie White, of course she did.
Yeah, when you're playing great players, you sort of got to pick your poison. And in the one that happens above the 3-point line, is that the one you're talking about? We'd really like to try to take it away and make her cut back door, right? Like our goal is to force them and her specifically, but great players into tough twos and only having to guard 1 or 2 actions instead of 3 or 4 actions. And so anytime you allow them to get to where they want to go off of the first screen, it's usually followed by 2 or 3 more. And so, not dictating, we were reacting once she came off. So our goal is to take it away and not let her come off of it.
So as per usual, that was, tremendous insight from Steph. She has a real knack for just making more complex things completely digestible, and it's always appreciated. But I wanted to go through all the UCLA cuts, or at least the majority of the UCLA cuts that New York ran in that game to show how Connecticut tried to counter it, how New York continued to open things up, and why it's indicative of Sabrina's growth and why it's important. Again, with the UCLA cut that I showed in the diagram, you often have that coming this way. And I think from what Steph is saying, at least my interpretation from what she's saying, they want to make Sabrina cut backdoor instead of letting her come down the middle of the paint. Because if you have, just in general for defense, you never want anything in the middle. So this is what they're doing right here. It was pretty much like this the entire game. It was, Benijah up here, JJ as the screener, and Sab coming off like this. So you have this first one, pass to Benijah, screen away, set up the screen, JJ screens. And this is what Connecticut opened up doing. Like they started with, okay, we're going to, flash, bump it a little bit with our 5, and then recover back out to the top. Of course, good pass. And this is, again, indicative of Sabrina's ability to play with more balance, with more strength, and just a good, tough finish against Ty Harris here. Okay, so next play. This time you have Stewie as the screener, opposite side of the court. And now Connecticut is doing something a little bit different. They high tag with Bree Jones so that she gets hands on, makes it so that there's a little bit of time for Ty Harris to catch up. You get DeWanna Bonner rotating low. Point being, you make this a lot more difficult for Sabrina because she has to turn and fire right away. There's no time to take a gather step. There's no room to really do much more getting there. This is good defense from the Sun. Again, that's just good stuff. Watch JJ here because this is going to be important moving into the next port. Again, so yeah, this is exactly what they are, what Steph White is talking about. Instead of opening up that middle, make her cut, go back door. We don't want to give her anything right down the middle. But then, here's Sabrina coming right back up, getting the ball from JJ. And this is that patience we're talking about again. Like, let the screen develop. Let the screen set up. There were times last year where I think this would be happening right here, and Sabrina would just go. And again, like, you can still create stuff out of that, but it's not going to be as effective as something like this. You get DeWanna coming back over. Bree Jones shows because she needs to give DB that time to get back over. Sabrina pulls to the side, which is something you want to do to keep two defenders engaged. JJ's opening up on the roll. Bree Jones is retreating back now that she has that. But Sabrina has the Wanna Bonner on her hip. And more importantly, too, I think it's really important for a player like Sabrina who doesn't necessarily have that great first step, but has strength, can play low to the ground. She gets into Dewana a little bit. And you can definitely warrant, like, maybe there's a little bit of a push off here. I don't think the league is great at talking about her. I mean, I shouldn't say talking about. I would say the league isn't great at necessarily how they call push offs, but I think there's contact from both ways, so it doesn't bother me. But again, get into your defender a little bit and then push off. This is so big because, again, I think there were times where she would just like try and jump off too and not really have like a strong base for finishing, because one of the most important things in finishing is your legs. Your legs and core have to be active and like actually propelling you towards the rim. You don't want to have momentum carrying you sideways or backwards. It's just that much harder to hit a shot like that. So again, pushes off right, gets square with the basket, easy layup. That's patience. That's key. That's stuff that I don't think she was hitting regularly last year. Okay, so final play that I think is incredibly important. This, again, when you're talking about that UCLA action, this is the final one. New York, if they score here, they pretty much have the game in the bag, in my opinion, and obviously they do. And the Sun, again, like we're talking about, they have toyed with how they want to cover this. Don't forget, JJ, she hit all those threes. Look at how things play differently. Okay, so you have the initial pitch, Dejanay and Sabrina, which was a really fun battle in this game. I enjoyed watching this one a ton. You can argue this is a moving screen on JJ, but they are so inconsistent in how they do or don't want to call moving screens. Whatever. Sabrina comes off, wide open after the screen. Easy finish. I do think like here, it's tough because New York's set up to flare essentially. So it's a good backside stuff to keep AT away. I do think in general, like they probably want to see backside help. Steph White mentioned after the game, like they want to have, this wasn't their best game in terms of being locked in defensively. But again, this is all the point. When you have Jonquel Jones alter the game the way that she did with how she took over shooting in the second half and also doing some stuff off the bounce that Bree Jones was struggling to contain, this becomes that much more impactful because you do not want this open. Last year, teams were totally fine with saying, okay, this UCLA cut's going to happen. We're going to trust our guys to get through the screen, to help on the backside, whatever, and we're not going to have to really worry too much about it to a huge extent. But this was over half of Sabrina's points this game, if I have it jotted down correctly, came out of the UCLA cut or UCLA cut variations. And that has been the story for the team this year. Being able to invert their offense more, which I think, especially with a team that Courtney Vandersloot has been out, and also she has not fully been herself yet this year, which maybe part of that is just like a little bit of getting older, but this team doesn't necessarily have like a true quote unquote point guard. So Sabrina making that growth as a finisher in patience and them being able to invert their offense more with Benijah Laney-Hamilton playing more as a ball handler, Stewie playing more as a ball handler, and JJ playing more from the outside in. This just opens up so much that gives this team meaningful versatility that is extremely difficult to stop. So that is it today on the video. I appreciate you guys tuning in and watching. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. Check out everything else I've got going. Have a lot of really fun stuff coming up. But I really enjoyed getting to dive into this one. I hope you enjoy the game today and just get to enjoy the rest of the weekend.